Have you ever been shamed for being poor? Looked down on because of your humble appearance? This is the true story of a boy who grew up with barely enough, but behind that rundown house lay an extraordinary determination. And every insult he endured became the reason why today he stands tall as a successful entrepreneur. In a small village far from the city center stood a rundown house at the end of a narrow alley. It wasn't like the other houses painted bright or surrounded by sturdy fences. Its weakened wooden walls were rotting, part gnawed by termites. The corrugated metal roof was rusted, and when heavy rain fell, the drops leaked through, echoing like a mournful beat that never stopped. That house belonged to Raka's family. Raka was the oldest of three siblings. His father worked as a pedicab driver, and his mother cleaned clothes for neighbors. Every morning his dad left early, pedaling his rusty Beckett in hopes of finding customers. His mom, with rough, soap-smeared hands, knocked on doors just to earn a day's wage. Despite their hardships, Raka was intelligent, yet his smarts were often overshadowed by his appearance. His school uniform was worn and full of patches. His shoes had holes, and his backpack was a black plastic bag folded twice to prevent tearing. Many kids at school laughed at him, and the worst came from neighbors, not classmates. One family down the lane was relatively well off. Their kids rode motorcycles to school and often openly mocked Raka. "Bro, aren't you ashamed carrying that plastic bag every day? Why even try to go so far in school? You'll end up like your dad, hauling people around." Raka never replied. He just lowered his head and walked faster. But inside he felt a sting, not just from being insulted, but because his father's name was being degraded. At night, when the electricity often went out, Raka studied by oil lamp. Outside the window, laughter came from the neighbor's house with their big TV. Meanwhile, Raka sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, copying notes from borrowed textbooks. Sometimes his mother would quietly bring him a cup of warm water and say, "Son, I'm sorry I couldn't buy you a proper lamp, but my prayers are always shining for you." Raka would smile, tears in his eyes. He'd hug her and whisper, "It's okay, Mom, I promise. One day I'll buy everything for you." Days passed, and Raka got used to the mockery, but inside a small flame was lighting up. Not anger, but determination. A determination to break the cycle of poverty, to free his mother from washing clothes for others, to save his father from pedaling under the scorching sun. What no one realized was that every insult Raka heard didn't break him. It fueled him. While other kids slept, he read. While they played, he helped his mother hang laundry. And when people laughed at his modest life, Raka quietly smiled, storing each wound into fuel for his strength. In that simple home, at the forgotten end of an alley, a dreamer was born. He had no inherited wealth, but he inherited resilience from his parents. And from the neighbor's hatred, he learned that silence can be the most graceful resistance. Next morning, gray sky reflecting Raka's mood. From the alley's edge, he saw his mother return, steps faltering, carrying just a plastic bag of rice and soap. Her hair was damp, her clothes wrinkled and clingy. Raka rushed to help, wiping her arms and face with a towel he grabbed. She sank to the wooden floor and offered a tired smile. "Mom, are you okay? You look so worn out," he asked. She inhaled deeply, eyes drifting to the rotted walls, and whispered, "At Boutique's house," she said, "don't let your child dream too big. Living like that, better have him work than go to college." Raka was silent. He didn't reply, but inside something burned. He wiped away tears. He refused to cry, his fingers trembling. He sat next to her, pretending to be strong. Later that night, after everyone slept, Raka stepped outside to the back of the house. The sky was heavy with clouds. Crickets chirped in the darkness. There, under the dim sky, he looked up and vowed, "I can't let this keep happening. I can't just watch you get humiliated like that. I will not be someone who just accepts fate." He bent down and cried quietly, not out of weakness, but because for the first time he felt such anger, such pain, and such fierce resolve. The next morning, Raka woke early with a new purpose. He carried a small basket of frozen sweets, his lilin, walking door to door, including the homes of those who had mocked him. Some bought, some refused, some sneered. A future as boss, huh? Going to open your own franchise? Raka smiled. He didn't respond, but inside he thought, let them laugh now. One day, I'll be the one smiling last. After selling, he studied. He'd pull out the old battered textbooks he'd bought at a used book market and rewrite pages by hand, because the original books were torn. No time for games, no time to complain. Every night he slept on the bare floor. But before he drifted off, he'd stare at the ceiling and whisper to himself, wait for me, future. I'm walking toward you. Years passed. Raka became mature beyond his age. While other teens scrolled through phones or hung out, he searched for ways to survive. He realized no one was coming to save him. No miracles would fall from the sky. Only he and the wounds he carried. But those wounds made him strong. They became fuel. They became armor. They became reasons why he must not fail. On an unbearably hot day, testing who could endure and who would fold, Raka stood in the street holding 2 large bags of food to deliver. He worked as a food courier for a small eatery. After school, he'd rush to change and pedal his borrowed bike to deliver orders to offices and stores. His wages were small, but he saved bit by bit. Not for new clothes, not for treats. He was saving for one thing, college application fees. Even when everyone announced it was impossible, Raka never let go of his dream. And when neighbors said, why go to college? Where will the money come from? Your family's not college material, just work. Raka simply bowed his head, no reply. But each insult only stoked his resolve. Late nights in internet cafes weren't spent on games, but on searching for scholarships. With change from his delivery tips, he printed applications. He applied for regional scholarships, educational foundations, even took part in free campus entrance exams. Then, after many rejections, a single email arrived. Congratulations, you have been accepted as a new student. You've been awarded a full scholarship. Raka froze. He read the email again, thinking it must be a dream. Then he ran outside, the scholarship letter in hand, and hugged his mother, who was sweeping the yard, and cried like a child. His mother said nothing, simply patted his back and cried too. College didn't make life easier. It became even harder. Though tuition was covered, living expenses were still a battlefield. Raka became a morning library attendant, afternoons teaching elementary students, nights cleaning campus halls and bathrooms. Sleep? 3-4 hours a day. Eat food? Often just rice with salt. But his resolve was stronger than hunger. In class, he was never late, always up front. His notes were perfectly ordered. Each lecture felt like a roadmap out of poverty. Amid assignments and side jobs, his smile never faded, but few knew it hid intense exhaustion. There were nights he cried alone, not to give up, but because he missed home, craved his mother's hug, needed even a moment's rest. Then he'd remember, I'm fulfilling the promise I made when I saw Mom humiliated. That memory alone was enough to lift him when he stumbled. 4 years later, graduation day came. Raka wore a rented cap and gown, his legs trembling as he walked across the stage. When his name was called as the top graduate, the room erupted in applause. But what really broke him wasn't the diploma. It was stepping off stage, hugging his mom and whispering, Mom, now it's my turn to fight for you. That day wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. Raka had shown that even wounded, a steadfast heart can carry you beyond any limit the world set for you. Back in his hometown, diploma in hand, Raka greeted his parents with confidence. Now I'll start working. I'll repay everything, Mom. Dad, I'll show you what I can do. Neighbors who once scoffed now smiled. Some addressed him as Sir, but he knew it was respect for the result, not the struggle. Day after day, he sent resumes, CV after CV, woke early for interviews, walked into them weary. But replies? The same. Sorry, you lack the experience we need. We'll be in touch. None ever called back. He eventually got one job, but the salary barely paid for a simple dorm meal. He left after months, He knew that path wasn't his. So he turned to what he knew, fixing used items and reselling them. Inspired by childhood tinkering, he found discarded goods at flea markets, cleaned, repainted, photographed, and listed them online. At first, there were just a few buyers. He got hopeful, then hit a setback. He trusted a friend as a business partner, pooling savings for inventory. That friend vanished, taking all the money. Raka sat on his dorm bed, phone silent, bank notifications showing zero. He didn't cry, he didn't rage, but the hurt cut deep. All that work, my hard-earned money, why now this? For the first time, real failure hit. He returned to the village, weary, head bowed, but not from shame, from fear. Fear of disappointing his mother. Stepping through the gate, an old neighbor mocked. Back so soon, eh? Failed, huh? Must have been sweet while it lasted. It felt like a knife again. Raka smiled, not because he felt strong, but because he was just too tired to argue that failing doesn't mean defeat. A few nights later, under a silent sky, Raka quietly spoke to himself. I didn't come this far to quit now. No single failure will steal my dream. I'll start again, from zero, but this time stronger. Failures sting, but they taught him that having a good heart doesn't guarantee good results. That trust can be broken, and that falling is not the end. It's part of the journey. After that setback, days at home felt empty. He slept in the same tiny room, woke early, not driven by ambition, just to calm his chaotic mind and rebuild his spirit. His mother stayed silent but steady, cooking with simple tools, serving plain sugarless coffee, and leaving it for Raka by his side. One morning, she placed a steaming mug before him and said, Son, if you still want to fight, I'll always believe in you. But if you're tired, it's okay too. I still love you. Her words shattered him. Tears fell like rain. Her unwavering belief, despite the entire world doubting, hit him harder than any insult. He left that morning differently, not with blazing fire, but with humble resolve. Start small. No grand goals now, just action. In a flea market alley, he spotted a broken fan tossed aside. He carried it home, cleaned, rewired, and repaired it slowly. When it finally turned on, Raka paused and whispered, If this broken fan can come back to life, why can't I? Day by day, he roamed markets, scrap yards, secondhand stalls, rescued broken items, fixed them at home, snapped photos on his old phone, posted them online with honest descriptions. Used item, fully functional. Maybe it's of use to you. At first, only a few sold, but bit by bit, interest grew. Not just because the items worked, but because Raka served with honesty, speed, and respect. He tracked every buyer, followed up, requested feedback. His reputation began to bloom. Within months, he rented a small warehouse. He took in more items, even invited unemployed local youths to learn repairs and e-commerce. He wasn't just rising, he was lifting others too. By year 2, his monthly revenue reached into the hundreds of millions of rupiah. He obtained licenses, branded his business, and implemented a professional online sales system. Local media started sharing his story. From junk to opportunity, the tale of Raka, the Becak driver's son turned entrepreneur. Yet one thing never changed. Every time he delivered items to another city, he first returned to his mother's house, kissed her hand, and said, Mom, this is for you. No more washing others' clothes. You rest now. She'd smile, pride shining, not in the money, but in the promise her child kept. Who would have thought? From things others dismissed as worthless, a spark of hope illuminated Raka's life and his family's. He proved that a comeback doesn't always come from something huge. Sometimes, it starts with sincerity, hard work, and unwavering belief, even when the world had almost crushed you. One bright day, the sun seemed to know something big had arrived in that small village. A simple car pulled up at the end of the alley. Children ran over, curious. A young man in a clean white shirt and black pants stepped out. His hair and face looked calm. But behind that calm was a smile shaped by countless struggles. It was Raka. Neighbors peeked out in amazement. They barely recognized him. The boy once labeled Bika driver's kid had returned with his head held high. He walked slowly down the alley past the houses that once bred pain, but now there was no mockery. Only stares of wonder and silent respect. A neighbor who had ridiculed him before stepped forward. "You're real successful now, huh? Got your own car? What's your business?" Raka smiled. No sarcasm, no harsh words. "I just sell refurbished used items, but in a new way." He moved on, leaving the neighbor quietly stunned. At home, his mother greeted him with tears, not because of the car or his new clothes, but because the boy who once cried alone had returned as a man who kept his promise. He kissed her hand and hugged his father. With a trembling voice, he said, "Thank you for never stopping believing in me, even when the world thought I was nothing." His mother replied simply, "I believe because you never stopped walking, even when you fell." After that, Raka never lost his humility. He stayed down to earth. But something changed. People now came to him for advice, not mockery. He was invited back to his old school to speak. Teachers beamed. Students listened with shining eyes. He never boasted. He only shared how it felt to be insulted, to fall, and to still choose to rise. A year later, he built a small mosque in the village, naming it Hope Once Underestimated. Not for showmanship, but because he remembered the many kids who, like him, felt forgotten. And he wanted them to know, poverty isn't a curse, shame isn't destiny, and limitation isn't the end of your story. That night, before launching a city branch of his business, Raka stood in front of his old childhood home. He gazed at the sky he once confided in and whispered, "Thank you, past. Without you, I never would have understood that being insulted isn't the end. It's the beginning of victory." He was once shamed as the poor kid. Now he's an entrepreneur who transformed many lives. Not because he's better, but because he never stopped walking, even after falling many times.